Welcome to People Matters by Shuluva. I am your host, Gulani Shuluvani. In today's episode, we'll be discussing all things leave entitlements. What are we getting right, and where and how can we do better? Our guest today is Nomonde Gxilishe. Nomonde, thank you so much for your time and welcome to People Matters. Please tell the peeps a little bit about yourself before we get started.
Hi, Kulani, and hi to your listeners. Thank you so much for this opportunity. As correctly introduced, my name is Nomonde, and I am a practicing attorney. I have been doing this since 2013, so I'm getting well there by the senior level as an attorney or as a legal practitioner, as we are called nowadays.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So like I said in the introduction, I want to talk about leave because I know you've probably come across a lot of the issues that you deal with, Nomonde, around leave, get so many employees into trouble, right? I know that in the work that we do at Shuluva, like one of the greatest misconduct issues that we deal with for our clients is around leave entitlements, interpretation of the leave policy, interpretation of the leave in terms of the basic conditions of employment, etc. So just before we get started, and I think as an opening question is just maybe a high level of what leave entitlements are South African employees entitled to, and what are sort of like the general provisions for each of them that you're going to talk about.
So I love that when you start, you keep mentioning interpretation, because a lot of the disputes that I'm sure you come across roll down to the interpretation between two different people. Because, when you have employer and employee, you have two different people who see things totally differently. And that is why, just to start off, it is always the responsibility of the employer to ensure that the employee understands exactly what the provisions of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act are and what they entail, because we've got different levels in the employment. And if you say to your employee, just read the Basic Conditions of Employment Act and you're supposed to understand it, you haven't done enough there. Exactly. And if dispute arise and an employee says, I did not understand it that way, then, it's very difficult to find fault in that employee. So, I always just say that employers must go the extra mile in explaining in layman's terms what this particular section means, what this particular provision means. It just adds that extra caution so that when a person comes and there's a dispute that has arisen, then it's not a matter of, I didn't understand that. You can find all fault, but it also does mitigate those kinds of disputes around leave, because then an employee then fully understands what they've agreed to. So just, I think, to jump right into the leave, I think the biggest one is the annual leave. Yeah. That is the most general one, which is the leave that each employee is entitled to on an annual basis or in a leave cycle. And when we speak about leave cycle or annual cycle, we speak about the time when the employee started working for the company. So not everybody starts on January the 1st of the year. So we can't say it starts from January. It's always the date on which the employee started working for the company, and that will be their year. Okay. So in that year, each employee will be entitled to 21 consecutive days per cycle. But we need to take into account that this includes weekends. So to simplify it, we always just say if you're working 5 days for an employer in a week, then your leave will be 15 days. And if you're working 6 days for the employer, then your leave will be 18 days annual. So that is just to keep it simple. Once again, you see, that is why you can't just hand the Basic Conditions of Employment Act to an employee to say, read it and you should understand what's going on. Correct. Because of these difficulties that may occur in interpreting it. So if you're working 5 days, you've got 15 consecutive days. And if you're working 6 days, then you've got 18 days. And it's important to note, I think, for the listeners, that your leave accrues. So when you start your cycle, you start at 0. So your leave will accrue as the time moves. So at the beginning, you've got 0, you don't have 50. You accumulate the 15. So every 17 days, you will accumulate a day.
Yeah.
So the next 17 days, you'll get the extra day. But once again, this can be very difficult. I mean, for companies that don't have, for companies that don't have systems and your IT software, which will do all this calculation, it can be so tedious. So I now have to call every 16 days. This person has every 17 days. This person now has a day. So again, to simplify it, you can say for people who work 5 days in a week for the employer, then they will accumulate 1.25 days each and every month. But I think that is so simple. Yeah, you get 1.25 days every month. If you work 5 days, and if you work 6 days in a week, you get 1.5. So it makes it very easy to calculate, because you're not now calculating 17 days and all of that. So every month that the employee has worked, they will be entitled to the 1.25 days or the 1.5 days. And by the end of the cycle, the employee is 15 days, has 15 days worth of leave. Okay. So it is another important thing that is important to note under annual leave is that there's always an agreement. There must always be an agreement with the employer around when the employee gets to take leave. So there is no real provision or regulation around when is the best time to take the leave, but it must always be suitable to the employer's operation.
Yes,
and then obviously there's a lot of benefit to the employees in that as well, because I know a lot of the employees will say, but that's unfair, it favors the employer only, but not really, because there's a lot of protection for the employees that comes under the annual leave regulation as well. For example, the employer cannot say no, instead of you taking your leave days, I'm going to pay you. It's not allowed. The employee must take leave in the annual cycle. Another thing is if the employee has accumulated 10 days, for example, or 7 days, and the employee wants to take the 7 days consecutively, maybe going on holiday or visiting family, the employer can say, no, take only 2, and then you'll take the other 3 at another time. If the employee is entitled to those days, then the employee is entitled to take that leave.
And what about carry on, sorry.
So another thing is, annual leave cannot be mixed with other leave, which is, I think, another thing that creates a lot of problems in the employment arena, where you find that a person has given notice of their resignation. And during the meeting, they're like, you know what? I don't want to work for this company anyway. I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to see these people's faces anymore. So I'm just going to exchange my annual leave and take leave for that notice period. It's not allowed. You cannot do that. What will happen is, if you've got leave days that have accumulated or accrued to you during that period, the employer will pay you out for those days, but you can't exchange a leave in that situation. You cannot mix it with sick leave. You cannot mix it with any other leave and just say,
family responsibility.
You cannot mix it with, you cannot mix annual leave with any of that. So I think the important thing to take out of the annual leave is the subject of annual leave is that it's 15 days per year if you work 5 days, and then it's 18 days if you work 6 days. It must always be in agreement between the employer and employee, and that you cannot use it at any other, you cannot mix it with any other type of leave. So I think under this specific one, I think that would be the biggest takeaway.
Okay.
And then there's another one. I don't know if you want me to dive right into sick leave or...
Yes, I was actually going to say, can we then talk about sick leave and then talk about family responsibility leave? Because annual leave, sick leave, and family responsibility leave is where we are always trying to clean up messes, you and I.
Yes. That's exactly why I went before I started speaking about sick leave, because oh my goodness, it's yeah, it gets a little bit
Yeah.
intense when it comes to this.
Yeah.
And also because, it involves a lot of things. When we speak about sick leave, we're speaking about, are you sick? Um, who diagnosed you? And are you
Mm.
so sick that you cannot work? Or are you just sick-ish? So there's a lot of elements that come to play when we speak about sick leave.
Yeah.
And that's probably why there's so much dispute around it. And
Yeah.
you'll see even the cases, the cases that trend, that
Yeah.
are publicized around employees that have been dismissed for sick leave. It's all really about, was this person really sick? And to the point where they're not able to perform their duties. Or was this person declared sick by a person who's authorized to diagnose that they're sick? So, I mean, yeah, there's all of that. But sick leave is exactly that. It's leave that you take when you are sick and you are unable to perform your duties in the context of your employment. So
Yeah.
I remember when I was starting in my career, a principal of mine once spoke about a person who, I mean, they were injured and they injured their finger. But as a person who was working in reception, it was understood why they needed to take some time off, because
Yeah.
they typing and they are, they need to use their fingers in their everyday working life. So
Yeah.
those are the other things that you need to look at. That is why it is said you are so sick that you cannot perform your duties.
Yeah.
You cannot do what you need to do. So when it comes to how much sick leave a person is entitled to, I think that is hardly ever an issue, because I mean, we've got so much sick leave. The legislator is so generous when it comes to sick leave. It's just around the process of taking the leave. So each employee is entitled to 36 sick leave days. That is if you're working 5 days in a week. So you are entitled to 36 sick leave days, and that is paid. And the only limitation here is that you only become entitled to these on the 7th month. So a minimum of 6 months is what you should have worked before you can be entitled to it.
Yeah.
So as
And just
compared
also,
to
to add in there is that sick leave is the cycle is different to annual leave. The annual
yes,
leave is every
yes,
year, whereas sick leave is every 3 years.
yes. So with sick leave, it's 36 months. It's your 30, I think I said 36 days, eh?
So it's 30 days every 36
30
months.
days every 36 months. Yes.
Yeah.
So I might have incorrectly said 36. So it's 30 days every 36 months. Whereas with annual leave, it's every year. So
Yeah.
that is where you need to be a little bit careful as well, because 36 months is quite a long time.
It is a long
36 months is quite a long time, where you have to carefully use your sick leave. I mean, understandably, there's nothing that you can do if you're really sick, but things like considering whether you actually want to use your sick leave for certain illnesses, minor illnesses, and so on, then you need to be a little bit careful there. But another difference between annual leave and sick leave is that, remember, with annual leave, it accrues with time as you work. But with sick leave, where as soon as you're done with your first 6 months of employment, you are entitled to all your 36 days.
Yeah.
30 days. Why do I keep saying 30
Because and I think this is the reason why we're having this conversation, because guys, we actually sit with the law on our table, because even us, the people who have to who work in labor law, who interpret it for our clients, etc., it confuses us even sometimes. So can you imagine people who don't understand, aren't familiar with the law and don't work under it every day? So Like it's
Yeah.
important, and that's why for me this conversation is particularly important, and also just
Yeah.
understanding it not only from the law perspective, but also the cultural nuances that come into play coming from a South African perspective or an African perspective as well. But we're going to delve into that a little bit later. I think for me, another thing when it comes to sick leave, it reminds me of the case of the guy who was on sick leave but went to a rugby match and posted pictures on his, I think it was Facebook. I don't know why people still post pictures on Facebook, but that's a story for another day. But I don't know if you remember that particular case.
Yes, 100%, 100%.
And he was, but like, I
And
was
you,
dropped off.
yeah, and
Oh, gosh.
it goes back to those elements that I was speaking about, when it comes, why sick leave becomes so complicated. It's never really about, if you look at all these cases, it's never really about, do you have enough sick leave days?
Yeah.
In a lot of these cases, the employees rather, always have enough sick leave days. That is hardly ever a dispute. The
Yeah.
dispute arises when you have to take the sick leave and you have to really say that you meet the requirements to take sick leave.
Exactly.
And those elements, are you so sick enough that you cannot be at work?
Mm.
Who is the person that diagnosed you? And
that who diagnosed you is also a problem, hey?
it's also a general problem. And when you speak about the African context, we will get to that. So
Yeah.
I mean, in that case with the guy who went to the rugby match,
Yeah.
the court or the employer, there is no way that they won't take that into account. And I mean, you will look at all these cases and you'll get really confused if you look at the labor court cases and the CCMA awards. And if you don't read the full awards, if you don't read the full judgments, you can get very confused. For example, if you rely only on the media summaries, because I can give you two or three different cases where the sick leave was a problem. But if you rely only on the media summary, you would think that the courts are not consistent.
Yes.
Because there has been a case where when an employee had taken sick leave, the document had said that this person is sick and should be booked off from work because they won't be able to perform their duties, but they were seen elsewhere during that period. And the court in this case said, look, what you as the employer need to concern yourself with is just that this person was booked off by a medical professional.
Yeah.
So you don't get involved beyond that. The fact that they were there, you saw them at the mall or you saw them somewhere else, that is
irrelevant.
Honestly,
yeah.
That is irrelevant. But then you look at that case, also where then the person went to a rugby match but was still booked off. Then the court in that matter, followed a bit of a different approach to say, I mean, that is
being
different.
at the mall while booked off, I think is slightly different to being at the rugby. For me, it's okay. So I'm booked off. Maybe I've got a really bad flu. Maybe I'm at the mall to go to Dis-Chem to get my prescription, guys. But now I'm booked off. I've got the flu, but I'm at the rugby shouting my lungs out with my. It's a completely set of scenario.
It's totally different, and I think that's where the type of work also plays a role.
Yeah.
Because if you are, can you think about if you are a telephone consultant or a receptionist, your voice needs to be, you need to be on your A game. Your voice needs to be proper functional for you to be declared ready for work.
Yeah.
So it would be different if you are seen at a shop or you are seen elsewhere, because you're not doing anything that requires you to use your voice. So yes, you are still medically unable to do your work. So if you're seen at the shop collecting your medication, or you're seen maybe taking your child to school, collecting your child, then it's a bit of a different. They can't say you were dishonest.
Exactly.
In that situation. I mean, if you say you cannot walk because you are so sick, but then you go to the rugby match, it's like, how did you get there?
Like, how did you
get there?
Exactly. and like walk
Yeah.
up the stadium stairs, get to the car, etc. Like, guys.
You see, that's exactly it. So, like that's why I say if you look at these cases and just rely only on the media summaries, you could just begin feeling that the courts and the CCMA are inconsistent in their application. So that is why in cases of this nature, you do need to go really deep into the facts and to see what the circumstances of each case are, because
Yeah.
that also directs the final decision
Yeah.
of the matter.
And I
So
would
you
also
can't
say for
just
me,
rely on. Mm,
I would also say for me, it's important for employers to actually understand the merits of their case before instituting any kind of action against the employee as well. I always
100%
say that it's
very important.
important to test your theory, like logically
Mm,
test your theory and bounce it off maybe other practitioners to say, this is what I'm going through. What are your thoughts?
yeah.
You're booked off sick, but you're still a mom, you're still a dad, you're having to drop off and pick up. Unfortunately, being a parent with the only thing that's really going to stop you from fulfilling your responsibilities as a parent is if you're hospital bound or bed bound kind of situation, if that makes sense, right?
Mm.
So it's important to always test the validity of what you're trying to do in terms of instituting any kind of action against an employee.
That is very, very true. That is very true. And I think that is the importance of actually having an independent advisor in the form of an HR or attorney when you are in an employer, because there's a lot of emotion. We don't want to have emotion in the workplace between employer and employee, but there's a lot of emotion that can sometimes blind or make you blind to logic.
100%.
Yeah. So when you look at it and we see an employee who's been booked off, but you see them driving their child to school, or you see them at the shop, your immediate reaction is that, oh my God, they're taking me for a ride.
Yeah, they were
And
dishonest.
they were dishonest. Why didn't she just tell me that she wanted the day off? Why didn't she just tell me that she didn't want to come to? So immediately then you, depending obviously on your response level, you can easily just see this person as a dishonest person. Whereas maybe if you've got that independent advisor who doesn't know you, who doesn't know your employee, and sit and collect all the facts, collect all the issues that you are complaining about, maybe they can guide you in that direction to say, actually, maybe there is no issue here, and
100%.
yes, there is no
Yeah.
issue here. And if you are to institute an action or any disciplinary action against this person, you are actually signing up for a bigger problem for your company. So I think
Exactly.
that's the importance of the role of advisors, I think, on an independent level.
Yeah, yeah. And let's talk about family responsibility leave, because this is another one that gets us into murky waters. And that's not to say that others don't, but I think for me, the reason behind this podcast and the conversations that we have is literally to discuss the issues that we don't really discuss and bring forth the light. And for me, the two that we've touched on and this third one that we're going to touch on now is probably, like I said in the beginning, where we see a lot of issues as well. So let's talk family responsibility leave.
Yes, you are not wrong there. It does create a lot of problems. And again, it goes back to what you spoke about, or how you introduced this episode of your podcast, where you said interpretation. Interpretation creates a lot of problems. Because if, Kulani, I am your cleaner in the yard, or I work at your company, but I'm there for general maintenance at the company. I'm able to comprehend family responsibility. If you tell me you are entitled to 3 days of compassionate or family responsibility leave, I'm going to take it as exactly that. I
Exactly.
can take days to attend to my family. all the intricacies, the elements, because I mean, that's what law is, hey, elements. All those elements. I'm not going to concern myself with all of that. I'm just, okay,
No.
I've got family responsibility leave and I will take it, and then
Mm.
that is where, again, we've got an interpretation problem, an understanding problem. And again, if a person acts according to their interpretation or understanding, then they are called dishonest or they're called out for trying to misrepresent the employer, when sometimes it's not even the case. It's just a matter of how I understood it and how you understood it, which then is different. So that is why, once again, it's important for the employer to ensure that employees understand exactly what is stipulated in the act and what is expected of them. So, yeah, so with the family responsibility leave, it's very brief, but I mean, the problems that come out of it, oh my goodness. You're entitled to 3 days if your child is sick. That's the first, that is the first situation that is catered for, only
Yeah.
your child. So
Yeah.
when you speak of child, you speak about adopted child or your biological child, but that is the only time that,
Mm-hmm.
sickness is provided for under family responsibility.
Yeah.
Other than that, then it's death, and it's death of your spouse, your life partner, your parent, adoptive or biological, your child, your grandparent, and your sibling. So once again, that is the only time that death of a person will be accounted for under family responsibility leave, and you've got 3 days of that.
You goodness. Hey, yeah.
Mm.
Compassionate leave and family responsibility leave, I'm sure, is probably for me one of the most kind of cases that I kind of have to deal with from a leave perspective outside of the other issues that come up in the workplace. So, do you think that there are certain elements of family responsibility leave, of compassionate leave, especially from an African context and a South African context, that you think needs to be more culturally appropriate? And not only the, family responsibility and compassionate, but let's also throw in sick leave there and talk about, who issues the certificate to say that you are booked off. Do you think that there are elements there where we need to be a little bit more broad from a cultural perspective? And I bring this up because there was a case, and I'm sure you know about this case, where a guy in a plant, Toyota plant in KZN, got fired after applying for family responsibility leave,
Yes.
and it was granted. And I can't remember all the nuances of the story, but ultimately, at the end of the day, they found out that he said that his father had died, but the person who had died was ubamncane wakhe. And for
Yes.
me, that makes sense. My father's brother dying is like my father dying in African
Yes.
culture. And that's why
Yes.
we say babmncane, because it means small dad. And then
Yes.
ubabkhulu is big dad, which is the
Yes.
person that would be older than your father. We have the same thing. I'm not Zulu.
Mhm.
I'm Tsonga, but we have the same thing. We have Papa Hulu, Papa Ntsongo, big dad,
Yes.
small dad, and then there's your
Okay.
dad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, it's just again a reflection of how far we still need to go in terms of our law and the application of the law to include
Mm,
the different cultures,
yeah.
because yeah, I mean, there's a huge gap. We can speak about marriages, we can speak about family situation. There's just a huge gap around um where the cultures come together, because you are
Mm,
absolutely correct. And I think the case that you're referring to with family responsibility, the Njilo case.
yes.
And yes, and I mean, he did say to the people, and I mean, you if you read it again, you'll also find that he spoke to fellow Zulu people,
Mm-hmm.
and he actually told them who are the people that have died and why he's taking the leave. So it is
Mm,
only when it was discovered later by maybe people who are not Zulu or who are of a different culture that
yeah.
he was seen as dishonest or having tried to misrepresent the employer.
Yeah.
around why he's taking leave. So it's exactly that. It is a gap, and it's a gap in application. It is honestly a gap in application of the law, and just that understanding of the difference in how we are as people. The Black way of doing things is, or the African way of doing things is very different to how maybe people who are not African, or other cultures, and I'm talking Indian and I'm talking white, that is also, that is very different. There cannot be one way of regulating it, and which then speaks to only one part of the South African culture. So all of this needs to be accommodated and dealt with even when applying the law. So even though the statute, which is the act, says that it has to be your mom, it has to be your dad, it has to be your spouse, or your adopted child, etc., etc. As in the application of that law or that rule, employers do need to be sensitive and awakened to the differences in their employment spaces. So even the courts, the courts are very sensitive in how they apply it, and that is why you will find that Mr. Njilo was found to not have been dishonest, because in his context, his babumkhulu or babumnani, it's the same as dad.
Yeah.
Niece or nephew, it's a child.
I was about to say, Nomonde, that if you think about it, if your sibling's child is sick, so let's say your sister's son is sick, in African culture, your siblings' children are your children, if that makes sense. So if you're, touch wood, God forbid anything happens, something happens to your niece or nephew, for you, that's the same as your child, you passing away or being unwell. And I like what you said, is that we need to be culturally sensitive and realize that also, a culture is not a blanket thing, right? And I suppose this is where it becomes complicated, and we need to sort of like find ways to apply it in a way that is fair to the equity or the situation. And I say fair to the equity and the situation because what matters to me as a Black female South African of Tsonga descent might be completely different for somebody else from a different descent, different gender, etc., etc., etc. So it's important that the application be fair, equitably, and circumstantially, if that makes sense.
100%, 100%. There is no blanket approach. And once again, the thing with labor law is it's very subjective. It is very subjective to what happened in the particular case. And once again, I think removing yourself as an employer from the emotional connection between you and the employee makes the situation so much better. Where you bring in a Kulani, for example, to say, but if you look at it in this way, then this person was not dishonest. Before the matter goes to court, before it even goes to disciplinary hearing, before it even goes to CCMA, to say this person was not dishonest. Because in their mind, in their brain, in their perspective, Babumkhulu is his dad. Niece is his daughter. It's I mean,
and especially in a cultural context where immediate family, I almost want to say there's no such thing as immediate family for Black people.
That's true.
And whoever's listening, please don't come for me. I'm trying to make a point here. There's no such thing as immediate family for Black people because, yes, from a European Caucasian perspective, and I almost don't want to even say Caucasian because I want to think of other Caucasian elements where I would even think like Portuguese and Italian. For them, I don't think there's immediate family. I think it's a little bit like us as, you know, Africans as well.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
stand to be corrected. But for me, the reason why we call our cousins, this is my sister, this is my brother, is because that's what they are.
That's so true.
And then we try to put an English to it where we say, oh, no, this is my cousin sister, this is my cousin brother, just so people understand.
Then it gets so messy.
It gets messy. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, there's certain cultural nuances that employers need to understand and accept and make provisions for before they start. You know, very few employees are out to sort of like abuse the system. Yes, there are a few, we've both dealt with them, where they are going to take the system and ride it for all it's got. But in the majority, I just think it's a bunch of good people who have different interpretations of what's happening. And it's important that both parties understand the nuances and make provisions for the nuances. You know, another question I get asked a lot is like, Kulani, why is it only 3 leave? Why is it only 3 days? You know, in Black culture, when somebody dies, it takes a whole week or 2 weeks.
It's not a lie, you know.
And it's not a lie, but for me, it's always, I laugh because I'm always the one left to try to explain it to our Caucasian counterparts, the kind of, I want to say, drama that goes into like a Black funeral.
Yes.
You know?
And I think like we say, it's just whoever seeks to apply what is written in the acts or in the codes or whatever, you know, just needs to have that awareness. And you know what that awareness will create, Nicola? It will create an environment of openness and honesty from the employees as well. Because if I, as an employee, know that my employer is open-minded and is open to my culture and how I do things in my culture, then I will be honest. And there's always, you know, when two parties are being honest, there's always room to compromise. So when I'm honest and I say, look, my dad has just passed away, but it's a Wednesday, you know, if he passes on a Wednesday, there's no way that the funeral is going to be on a Saturday. So it'll probably be the following Saturday.
Yes. And there's so much preparation that goes
yes.
into all of that. Yeah.
Yes. But I understand I cannot now say I'm off from this Wednesday up until the following Saturday. So you see, because now you and I are having this open conversation where you are open and you're open to receiving my views on my culture. And if you want to test it somewhere else as an employer, go ahead and do it. Ask somebody else. Ask another. Ask your legal advisor. Ask your another colleague or another employee of the same culture if you want to test the validity of what the particular employee is saying. But that's just the point that I want to make, that if employers are also showing that openness, then it creates a room for honesty and less people trying to cheat themselves out of the system so that they can actually do what they need to do. Because a lot of the times, you find that a person is really the main character in arranging the funeral and has to be there for the entire week. They're not playing it. So, you know, if you then open up, they're not playing.
I'm thinking about a situation where it's like the firstborn son in a family. Like in certain cases, nothing will go forward until the firstborn son is at home and is present to make certain decisions, etc., etc. Or firstborn daughter, or you know, I remember, and luckily for me, I wasn't in any kind of formal employment at the time when my grandmother passed away. Literally, our entire lives came to a standstill for a period of a week and a half, etc., etc. But in my mind, I was just so grateful to that I didn't have to explain it to anybody, you know. And I remember there were family members, because also we deviated from culture a little bit, I will be honest there, and we actually buried my grandmother on a Monday and not the usual weekend. And we had family members who had to account to their employers, and it was a weekend before the 15th of December in December. So you can imagine, yo. So the family members had to, now we had to make copies of my grandmother's birth certificate, so because they took leave. Again, it's like, why are you taking leave for this auntie who's not your mom, not your grandmother? And they're like, this woman actually raised me. She's my mother's sister, or she's my mother's cousin. But for a long period, when I was in high school, primary school, or university, I lived in her home. There's no way I cannot be at her funeral, so it's all those kinds of sort of like nuances that I think employers need to think about, that become very, very complicated, unfortunately. But I do agree with you, is that the moment we start to have open and honest conversations about what the nuances and what the cultural realities are, it makes room for people to be like, okay, I might not necessarily comprehend it, but I see that this is important to you. So go ahead and take the time that you need. Because realistically speaking, guys, I don't think me being away from work for 3 days is going to bring the entire organization down. Unless, I mean, then that's when we need to talk about, business continuity modeling.
Yes, I was going to say, that then maybe we're speaking about fixing a whole different problem.
Yes, exactly. So I think, sure. Anyway, before we close up and I let you go, I want to throw another spanner in the wheels, because now we do have an understanding that, yes, I do think that, it's important that we, yes, take into account what the law says, but also take into account the cultural realities that people come from and live by, adhere to, are part of. Yeah.
100%.
So, talking about leave, I want to throw another spanner in the wheels just before we go. I want to know what your thoughts are on menstrual leave. I'll tell you what my thoughts are, but I thought I should ask, because this is a new hot topic. We're all talking about it. When I was actually researching it, Zambia is the only African country that has menstrual leave in terms of like legislated. Like women in Zambia get 1 day a month to deal with their, what I want to call girl issues, but it's menstrual leave, So thoughts?
Firstly, I think it would be nice.
Amen, hallelujah.
The women me thinks it would be nice, because I think, you and I will know, and a lot of other women out there will know how difficult life can be, around the time of the month. I mean, a simple task that you're so used to doing every day can feel 10 times more difficult.
Yeah.
Okay? So I think it would really be beneficial, and at the end of the day, long term, be good for the company as well. Because you always know when employees feel like they're being taken care of as human beings, and as they are, then productivity always goes up. I do have to also say that I think it will come with a lot of responsibility and difficulty, I think, in the South African context, because of applying it practically, and how do we do about it individually. I think it is something that we would need to look at closely, in terms of how do we implement it, and how do we make sure that it does not, at the end of the day, affect the operation. Look, and when I say what I say now, I'm looking at the context of smaller companies, that maybe majority of the people working there are women. So how do we regulate a situation where maybe the ladies who are in the office sort of like go on their periods at the
And
same time.
when there's like, I was about to say, that's another problem, is that if there's a lot of women in one department or in one workplace, your cycle is all like everybody's in a bad mood for like 3 days, 5 days around the same time of the month, because it kind of syncs up. I completely agree with you. I was doing some research and one lady said, it sounds great, but then it just would make getting work for women a little bit harder, whether we like to admit it or not. We do deal with unfair prejudices in the workplace as women, etc., and also in terms of trying to acquire work. So, and when she mentioned that, I said, I suppose we have employment equity for that, but practically speaking, I understand where the other person is saying, but I agree. I do think that, and also I don't think menstrual leave means it would necessarily mean taking the day off completely. In some cases, it might just mean that, can I just have my laptop and work from home if you're able to? And I get that there might be some jobs where you might not be able to do that, but again, I'm sure we can make provisions for that. So yeah, I as a woman who has a cycle every month, also having to deal with other, it's not only the cycle, it's also, women having to deal with other challenges. Maybe you have fibroids, you have PCOS and all of those things. It just makes that time of the month even worse. I was actually just sharing with a friend earlier today that I actually stopped having a personal trainer because they wouldn't understand that when I'm on my period, I wouldn't be able to push as hard in the gym, lift as heavy, because guys, it's kuningi, as you would say.
It's hard. That is why, that's why I said, like, something that you're so used to doing every day, can feel 100 times harder. Just waking up can feel so difficult. And then it goes back again to the comprehension if you are not going through that. So, I was just thinking about it and I'm like, I wonder if we won't also have females in the workplace who are now being profiled or, seen as less competent at that time of the week, just because I have told my male senior that, this is when I need to take my menstrual leave. It's how I am seen as a woman, because we all know the stereotypes, we all know the myths around women when women are on their periods, they are irrational, they make all sorts of crazy decisions, they're not themselves. And I mean, to an extent, we all know that the emotional balance is a little bit different. But
your hormones are out of whack, guys. Let's be honest. Our hormones are doing the most.
It's natural, but
we didn't ask, guys. Me, I always go down and I say I blame Eve for eating the apple, but people were like, Adam should have been there to stop her. So there we go.
Exactly, but I don't want to now be seen as just for that particular week. For example, certain decisions are being taken away from me because on my periods, or I'm just for that week I'm seen as being incapable, and it affects eventually how I do my job, or it affects how I am seen in the workplace. So I think it also boils down to ties with maternity leave, where people in interviews will be asked, do you have children? But why do you?
Goodness. Can people please stop asking that question? Like, it's not your business.
Yes, are you planning to have children in the near future? No, it's not right.
It's illegal. Right. Let's be honest. It's actually illegal. From an employment equity point of view, it's illegal to ask somebody that question.
Yes. Yeah. So I think once again, on paper it would look nice, but it would create a different level of challenges for women. I mean, we are still struggling with women with children, women who are pregnant, have children, or women who go to interviews and they're being asked all those kinds of questions. which then either lead to them not getting the work or just being seen in a certain way because they plan on having kids in the near future, or they already have children and they just for some reason are seen of being incapable to do their work. So I think with the period, the menstrual leave as well, on paper it would be nice, and I think if we had more education around it, and all the men who don't experience it were educated enough about it and how to deal with it. I think once we get there, then it would be great because it would create that autonomy where everybody just does what they need to do around.
I just think that we should get one of those period activator machines and get every man on the planet just to and put it on them for like 5 days at a mere level 3, and just for an entire week. And some might need to put it on maybe every week for like 3 months, just so they understand. And I don't even think that simulation fully gives them the full experience as to what we actually really go through. But yeah, I agree. On paper, great. Practically, it might be a little bit murky, but I'm still a huge fan of menstrual leave. And I hope that at some point, I hope at some point that we would follow our Zambian counterparts. Maybe it's because they gave their ladies menstrual leave that they have 24 hours of electricity, hey? Because they also sorted out their issues in that regard. So
Yo, don't speak about that.
Oh well, yeah. But anyway, Nomonde.
But I think I think when we get to that point, I just think that all these smaller things surrounding periods and menstruation and the different types of experiences that women go through. I mean, how women A and women B experience their period is totally different. So I just I just hope that when that time comes, the legislator takes all of that into consideration so that we don't have those loopholes that we are seeing in a lot of what we discussed earlier on today. We kind of have very minimal loopholes, and that everybody is catered for. Everybody's catered for, and everybody just feels human.
Awesome. Nomonde, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much. How do people get hold of you if they need your services?
So I don't know if I must share my cell phone number here.
I think email and website might be a lot better, but
so my email is Nomonde, NOMONDE at KUFESA.co.za. So it's nomonde@kufesa.co.za. Then website is still coming. It's under construction, but give it a few more weeks and then it'll be out there. But it's www.kufesa.co.za.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nomonde. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity. Anything to just give back and teach people here and there.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Until next time, thank you and chat soon. Bye, everybody.